Welcome back to the deep dive. We're going to start today with a little bit of a thought experiment. So I want you to just try and tune everything else out for a second.
Okay, I'm with you.
Forget the emails, forget the coffee on your desk. I want you to just imagine you're picking up your phone, you look at the screen, and you check the date. And the date is Sunday, February 1st, 2026.
That is a very, very specific date. And for a certain group of people, I imagine a potentially terrifying one.
Extremely specific, right?
Okay.
Because if you're listening to this, there's a pretty good chance you're working somewhere in the SAP world. Maybe you're a sales and distribution consultant, an SD consultant.
For sure.
You've been doing this for, I don't know, 10, 15, maybe even 20 years. You have your favorite T codes memorized. You know exactly which field and which table holds the sales order header status without even looking.
Oh, absolutely. Your mortgage, your kid's college fund, it's all probably been paid for by knowing the ins and outs of the pricing procedure in ECC 6.0. You know that logic, like the back of your hand.
Exactly that. But here we are, it's February 2026 in our thought experiment, and the landscape looks, well, it looks completely different. The old world, as we'll call it, the world of ECC support, it's basically over.
It's on life support at best.
Right. We've got that 2027 hard stop for mainstream support just staring us all in the face. And yeah, there's extended support out to 2030, but that's for people who are, willing to pay a hefty premium for it.
And not many are.
So if you're that consultant, you're standing at these crossroads and the toolkit, the set of skills that got you here, well, it's starting to look a little rusty.
Rusty is being very, very kind. I'd say, honestly, it's becoming obsolete. The source material that we're digging into today, this comprehensive strategy roadmap they're calling SAP Future, it puts it much more bluntly.
How so?
It basically says the strategies of the last 2 decades are dead. Finished. If you're still trying to solve business problems the way you did back in 2015, you're not just inefficient, you're actively creating technical debt. You're no longer the asset, you're becoming a liability.
Wow. That's a heavy thought to wake up to in 2026.
Yeah.
But the point of this deep dive, the mission here, it isn't to scare anyone. It's about making a pivot.
A necessary pivot.
The roadmap claims it can guide a listener, let's say a traditional functional spec writer, and transform them into what it calls a lead-to-cash architect. Now, I have to ask, is that just some fancy new LinkedIn buzzword, or is there a real tangible difference there?
Oh, it's a fundamental difference. It's a complete change in how you approach your job. A spec writer, they take an order from a business user. The user says, I need a button that does this, and the spec writer tells a developer to write some code to make the button.
Okay, that's the classic model.
Right. An architect, on the other hand, understands the standard capabilities of the platform so deeply that they can listen to that same request and tell the business user, no, we are not writing code for that. Here is the standard process that achieves 95% of your goal, and here's why that's better for the long-term health of the system.
So it's a shift from being a customizer to being a guardian.
A guardian of the clean core. Exactly. And that phrase, clean core, is really the new law of the land.
Okay, so let's map out our journey for today. We have a massive amount of ground to cover based on this roadmap. So we're going to break it into 3 main parts.
Sounds good.
First, we'll talk about the core evolution,
right?
What is actually happening inside S/4HANA sales and why this clean core idea is, well, non-negotiable now.
The foundational stuff.
Then part 2, we'll get into the money makers. These are the new high-value modules and skills, things like BRIM and ATP, that are actually driving consultant rates up and creating demand.
The areas where you can really specialize and stand out.
And finally, part 3. We'll peel back the cover and look at what the roadmap calls the hidden technical layer. This is the stuff that functional consultants have, traditionally been able to ignore but simply can't afford to anymore.
Yep, the skills that separate the experts from the crowd.
Right. But let's start at that macro level. It's 2026. The SAP landscape has fundamentally shifted, and we keep hearing 2 terms thrown around everywhere by recruiters, by sales reps: rise with SAP and grow with SAP.
All the time. And they're often used interchangeably, which is a huge mistake.
Okay, so please, clear the fog for us. What is the actual practical difference between rise and grow?
It all comes down to a simple trade-off: Control versus standardization. Think of it this way. Rise with SAP is the private cloud offering.
Okay.
It's like taking your existing on-premise house with all its custom renovations and weird plumbing and moving it onto a plot of land that SAP now owns and manages.
So I still own the house, but SAP owns the property.
Precisely. You still have a lot of freedom inside that house. You can, knock down some non-load bearing walls. You can paint the ceiling whatever weird color you want. It's flexible, but, and this is the critical part, SAP is now the landlord.
And they have rules.
They have rules, and they are tightening the screws. If your house is dirty, if it's full of custom code modifications, Z tables, your upgrades are going to be incredibly painful, and you're going to pay for that complexity. SAP will penalize you for it, either directly or through higher service costs.
Okay, so RISE is the sort of soft landing. It lets you bring some of your old baggage with you, even if you probably shouldn't. So what's GRI over?
Grow with SAP is the public cloud. This is pure software as a service, or SaaS. To use the housing analogy, Grow isn't a house, it's a luxury condo in a high-rise building.
I see.
You do not own the walls. You can't knock them down. You absolutely cannot change the plumbing. You can decorate your unit, but the core structure is immutable. The rule in Grow is absolute. Zero modifications to the core application code.
And this is where the panic probably starts setting in for that veteran consultant we were talking about.
This is the moment, yes.
Because I remember my entire early career, if a client said, I want the system to do X, and standard didn't do it, the answer is always no problem.
Yeah.
We'd go find a user exit. We'd open up MV45 ASZZ.
Ugh.
MV45 AFZZ. The Holy Grail. The Holy Grail of sales order modifications. And we'd write a chunk of ABA code in there, and that was it. That's how you earned your keep.
It's legendary. Entire careers, fortunes were built on knowing exactly where to insert a piece of code in that specific include to force a sales order to behave a certain way. But in the public cloud, or any true clean core environment, MV45 AFZZ is effectively off limits.
So what you're saying is, if I write a functional spec in 2026 that says, insert custom logic and user exit, I failed.
You failed. You are trying to take a sledgehammer to the walls of your condo. The building manager, SAP, is not going to be happy. You're thinking with a 2010 mindset.
Okay, so if I can't write code in the user exit and the client still has this critical business requirement, what am I supposed to do? I can't just tell them no, can I? Because, clients generally don't like hearing no.
You have to guide them to the new way. This is the extensibility tiers. It's a new mental model for customization. You don't just write code anymore. You have to categorize the problem and use the right tool for the job. Tier 1 is in-app extensibility.
And what does that mean in plain English?
It's for the simple stuff. A business user wants a custom field on the sales order screen to track, say, a marketing campaign code. Or they want to hide a tab that they never use.
Right. In the old days, that was a call to a developer. They'd have to open the screen painter, modify the DOM Pro, add it to the table. It was a whole project.
Exactly, a mini project for a simple field. Now, with Tier 1, you use fewer key user tools. You, the functional consultant, literally go into an adaptation mode. You drag and drop a new field onto the screen, you give it a name, and you're done. No code, no developer. It takes 5 minutes.
Okay, so that handles the cosmetic changes, the simple stuff. But what if I need actual logic? What if I need to build a validation that says a customer in region B is not allowed to buy product A because of, I don't know, a trade embargo? That needs an IF the end statement.
Then you graduate to Tier 2, developer extensibility. And this is where things get really interesting because you are writing code, but you're not writing classic ABA. You're writing something called ABA Cloud.
ABA Cloud, is that just a marketing rebrand, like calling a used car pre-owned?
No, it's very real. It's a restricted, much stricter version of the ABA language. It follows what's called the RAP model, the RESTful ABI programming model. And here is the single most important constraint you have to understand.
Lay it on me.
In ABI Cloud, you cannot directly access standard SAP tables. You cannot write select from VBA.
Wait, hold on. Rewind that. I can't select from a table. That is literally the first thing you learn in ABA 101. That's like being a chef and being told you can't use a knife.
I know, it's a huge mental shift, but think about why. If your custom code selects directly from table VBAK, and then SAP decides to change the structure of VBAK in the next quarterly cloud release, what happens to your code?
It breaks. It dumps.
Yeah, instantly. And now you're in a firefight during an upgrade. The ABAP cloud model forces you to use released public APIs. So instead of selecting from the table, you call the sales order read API. SAP guarantees that the API structure will remain stable even if they completely redesign the underlying database tables.
Ah, so it decouples your custom code from their core code.
It creates a firewall, a contract. Your code is safe. Their core is safe. It's safer, but yes, it is much more restrictive. You can only use the tools SAP explicitly gives you from their whitelist of released objects.
Okay, that's a big one to wrap your head around. What's Tier 3?
Tier 3 is side-by-side extensibility. This is for the really heavy, complex stuff. Let's imagine you want to build a crazy AI-driven pricing engine that queries live stock market data and social media trends to set dynamic prices for commodities.
Right, something you would never, ever want running inside your core ERP.
Exactly. It would be a performance nightmare and a security risk. So you don't build it inside S/4HANA. You build it side by side on the SAP, the business technology platform. It lives in its own little world, its own container, and it just communicates with S/4HANA through stable, secure OData APIs.
So the ERP stays pristine. It's just the transactional engine. All the wild custom accessories are bolted on the outside, not hardwired into the engine block.
That is the perfect analogy, and the huge benefit is when SAP upgrades the core S/4HANA system every 3 months, which happens in the public cloud, your complex pricing engine doesn't even notice. It doesn't break. You're not fighting the upgrade cycle. You're just riding the wave.
Okay, I get the strategy. It's a massive change, but it makes sense. Keep the core clean. So let's get our hands dirty now. Let's dive into the core itself and talk about the actual changes in the sales module, S/4HANA Sales. The source material has a great chapter title for this, Unlearning ECC.
Yes. And the very first thing you have to unlearn is your deep knowledge of the database. If you're an experienced SD consultant, you think in table games. VBAK for the header, VBAP for the item, LIKP for the delivery header.
It's our second language. I'm pretty sure I dream in table names sometimes.
Well, get ready, because the grammar has fundamentally changed, and the most famous casualties of this change are tables VBUK and VBUP, the status table.
Oh, wow. I use those every single day. Header status and item status. If a client wanted a report of all open orders or all orders blocked for credit, my first stop was always VBUK. You're telling me they're gone.
Deleted. Physically removed from the database schema. If you go into SE16 and type VBUK in an S/4HANA system, you get an error message. Table does not exist.
So where did the status go? Did we just stop tracking if an order is open or closed?
No, of course not. The data has been moved. It's been denormalized. The status fields are now just columns appended directly to the header and item tables themselves. So the overall status field now lives directly on VBAK. The rejection status now lives directly on VBAP.
Logically, I get that. From a HANA database perspective, that makes total sense. It avoids a table join, so any query on status must be exponentially faster.
It is much, much faster. But think about the practical implication for a minute. If you have a custom report, a Z report, that was written 5-10 years ago, and it has a line of code that says, join VBAK and VBK to get sales order status.
It's going to dump hard.
Immediate runtime error. It won't even compile in the new system. This is one of the biggest gotchas in any S/4HANA conversion project. It's why you cannot just lift and shift your old Z programs. Every single piece of custom code that touches status has to be identified, analyzed, and rewritten.
And what's the new correct way to do it? Do I just select from VBAK now and read the new status field?
You could do that, but it's still not the recommended clean core approach. The modern way is to use CDS Views Core Data Services. You shouldn't be thinking about physical tables anymore. You should be thinking about the virtual data model that SAP provides.
We're definitely going to have to circle back to CDS views in the technical section, because that sounds like a big hurdle for a lot of functional folks.
It is, but it's essential.
Okay, another big table. What about pricing? KONV, the cluster table for pricing conditions on a document.
Also gone. Well, not quite as dramatically. The structure KONV still exists in the ABFT dictionary for some code compatibility, but the underlying database table where the data is stored is now PRC elements.
Okay, PRC elements. Why the change?
A few reasons. It's a transparent table, not a cluster table, which is much better for HANA. It also has deeper field lengths for amounts and currencies to handle more complex scenarios. The bottom line is, if you have old code that's trying to do a direct SQL select on KONV, you're going to have a very bad time. It's another thing that needs to be refactored.
So the plumbing of the system is completely different. But there's a functional change, a process change, that I know from experience drives people absolutely mad during a project. The business partner.
Ah, yes, the mandatory business partner. The death of the standalone customer and the standalone vendor.
I mean, XD01, VD01, XK01. create customer, create vendor. These were probably the first 3 transaction codes I ever learned in SAP.
And now they were dead. You literally cannot run them in a fresh S/4HANA system. If you type XD01 into the command bar and hit enter, the system automatically redirects you to the transaction BP.
So why? Why this forced change? To a lot of people, it just feels like change for the sake of annoyance. It worked fine before.
It's actually to fix a design flaw that's been in the system for, what, 30 years? Imagine you do business with a big company like, say, Siemens.
Okay.
You sell them finished goods, so they are your customer, but you also buy electric motors from them for your factory, so they are also your vendor. In ECC, what did that mean?
2 completely different master data records. A customer number, say 1001, and a vendor number, maybe 808. 2 different addresses, 2 different sets of bank details, 0 linkage between them.
Exactly. And if their headquarters moved, you'd have to remember to update the address in 2 separate places. You'd inevitably forget one, and then invoices would start going to the wrong place. The business partner concept finally fixes this. It says, there is one legal entity called Siemens. We create one business partner, one BP ID. That single BP can then play multiple roles.
So we're going to have a customer role, a vendor role, maybe a carrier role.
Even an employee role. It's a much cleaner, more unified data model. One entity, many functions.
Cleaner data in theory, but I have heard absolute horror stories about the implementation, specifically about something called CVI, Customer Vendor Integration.
It is, without a doubt, the single biggest point of failure in S/4HANA migrations. CVI is the technical bridge. See, even though we use the BP transaction on the front end, many of the underlying tables in SD and MM still need the old COINN, customer number, and LIFNR, vendor number, for compatibility.
So the old fields are still there.
They're still there. CVI is the engine that synchronizes the BP ID to the customer ID and the vendor ID. If you mess up the configuration, the number ranges, the groupings, the field mappings, you can get into a state where you cannot create a customer, period. The business comes to a screeching halt.
That sounds like what we call a resume-generating event, if you get that wrong.
It can be. It requires incredibly careful planning and data cleansing before you even start the migration.
Okay, let's pivot from master data to the functional tools. The source roadmap mentions that some of our beloved classic tools are being deprecated or replaced entirely. Let's start with rebates.
Classic rebate processing using transaction VB01 is gone. It's on the obsolescence list. You cannot use it for new agreements in S/4HANA. The replacement is a whole new module called settlement management, specifically a component called condition contract management, or CCM.
Settlement management sounds very financial. It sounds like a finance term. Why is a sales consultant suddenly having to deal with settlement?
It is a finance term, and that's the whole point. It signals a move toward a more integrated process. Classic rebates were very rigid. They were designed for one purpose. If a customer buys X amount of product, I will give them Y amount of money back. That's it.
Pretty straightforward.
CCM is a generic, powerful engine for any kind of settlement. It can handle customer rebates, yes, but it can also handle sales commissions for your internal team, royalties you have to pay to a patent holder, supplier rebates you get from your vendors. It's all handled through the same architecture. The central transaction is WCOCO.
Is it more difficult to configure than the old rebate agreements?
It's more abstract, for sure. You have to learn new concepts like the settlement document, but it solves so many problems that classic rebates never could, like handling retrospective changes that require you to reopen closed financial periods. It creates a much cleaner, more auditable trail for the finance department.
Okay, another one. Credit management. I loved transaction FT32, the credit master sheet. It was one screen, everything was right there. Simple.
Also dead. Replaced by a module within FSCM Financial Supply Chain Management.
There's that word again, financial. It really feels like the sales module is losing control of its functions to the finance world.
I would frame it as integration rather than losing control. Think about what FT32 really was. In most companies, it was just a static credit limit. John Doe gets a $10,000 credit line, and maybe someone reviewed it once a year.
Right. It was very manual.
FSCM credit management is dynamic. It's alive. It calculates a credit score for each customer based on a configurable formula. It looks at their payment history, their history of disputes, their average days in arrears, and it can even integrate with external credit agencies like Dun & Bradstreet via API.
So if a customer starts paying their bills late, the system can automatically lower their available credit limit without a human having to intervene.
Exactly. It's proactive risk management, not reactive data entry. It protects the company's cash flow in a way FT32 never could.
That's powerful. And finally, before we move on from the core, let's talk about output determination. Printing, emailing, transaction NACE. I feel like NACE has been around since the dawn of SAP.
It has, and technically it's still supported in S/4HANA for compatibility reasons, but it's officially designated as legacy. If you are doing a fresh greenfield implementation in 2026, you should absolutely not be using NACE. The modern approach is called SAP S/4HANA Output Management.
And that's the one based on BRF plus REC.
Correct. Business Rule Framework Plus. It's a complete paradigm shift. Instead of wrestling with cryptic condition tables and access sequences in the IMG, you configure your output rules in a visual, web-based decision table.
So it looks more like an Excel sheet.
Exactly like an Excel sheet. The columns are your conditions. If sales ord is $1,000 and customer group is VIP ND order value $50,000, and the columns on the right are the results. Then use email template VI Porter confirmation and send to printer executive wing. It's much easier for a business user to read and validate, but for a consultant who grew up on NES, it's a totally different configuration interface and skill set.
Okay, so just to recap this whole first part, the underlying tables are different, the master data model is completely different, and the core engines for our key processes like rebates, credit, and output have all been swapped out for new, more integrated solutions.
Correct. If you walk into a new S/4HANA project today relying solely on your ECC knowledge from, say, 2020, you are going to hit a wall and you're going to hit it fast. In many of these core areas, you are effectively a junior consultant again.
That's the survival part of the roadmap then, learning how to navigate this new core. Now let's talk about the growth part, the moneymakers. The roadmap identifies a few specific areas where demand is absolutely skyrocketing. If you want to increase your daily rate, if you want to be in high demand, this is where you need to focus.
This is where you go from just surviving to thriving.
The first one on the list is AATP, Advanced Available to Promise.
This is huge right now. I mean, just think about the last 5 or 6 years. We've had global pandemics, container ships getting stuck in canals, wars, chip shortages. Supply chains are incredibly fragile.
Oh yeah, we all remember the toilet paper shortages. Or trying to buy a new car or a PlayStation 5. Available inventory.
Yeah.
Have a national obsession.
Exactly. And in the old ECC world, ATP was a very simple binary check. The system asked one question: do I have stock, yes or no? The answer was yes, confirm the order. If no, put it on back order. It was first come, first serve.
Which is a huge problem if some low-priority, low-margin customer places a massive order online and buys up all your stock, and then your biggest, most strategic VIP client calls you 5 minutes later and you have nothing left for them.
Precisely. AATP completely changes the game. It changes the fundamental question from, do I have stock, to who deserves the stock I have. It introduces business context and prioritization into the availability check. And the two biggest features here are PL and BOP.
Okay, let's break those down. What is PI?
PL is product allocation. This is your fair share of logic. Let's say you're launching the new iPhone and you know you'll only have 1,000 units in the first week. You can configure PL to say the retail store channel gets 600 units and the online web store channel gets 400 units.
So you're ring-fencing the inventory.
Exactly. Even if the retail channel gets orders for 800 units, the system will only confirm the first 600. It will automatically protect the remaining 400 units for the online channel. It prevents one sales channel from cannibalizing another.
That's incredibly useful. So what is BOP?
BOP is backorder processing. And in S/4HANA, this has been completely reimagined with what they call winner-loser logic.
That sounds ruthless.
It is. It's automated ruthlessness based on business rules. You define different strategies. Let's take our previous example. That VIP customer calls you. You have no stock available. But you know there's an order from a lower priority customer that's confirmed and scheduled to ship next week.
Okay.
The BOP run can be configured to identify that lower priority order, automatically unconfirm the quantity making them the loser, and then reassign that now available stock to the new high priority order for the VIP, making them the winner.
So it literally steals confirmed stock from one order and gives it to another.
It reallocates scarce inventory based on business priority. Companies absolutely love this because it allows them to maximize revenue and customer satisfaction for the clients who are most important to their business, all automatically.
I can definitely see why consultants who know how to configure that are in high demand. And the roadmap mentioned a third element, ABC.
Yes, alternative-based confirmation. This is a save-the-sale logic. It adds more intelligence right at the moment of order entry. If the customer's preferred plant A, is out of stock, the system can automatically check for stock in a nearby plant B,
So the sales rep doesn't have to manually go and check 5 different plants.
Correct. And it can go even further. If the requested product is out of stock everywhere, it can check if there's a valid predefined substitute product available and offer that instead. It's all about reducing friction and capturing the sale right then and there.
Okay, now for the second moneymaker. This one feels like the buzzword of the decade. BRIM, Billing and Revenue Innovation Management.
It's way more than a buzzword. It's a reflection of a fundamental economic shift. We are rapidly moving from a product economy to a subscription economy, or a servitization economy.
What do you mean by that?
Companies don't just want to sell you a tractor anymore. They want to sell you farming as a service, billed by the acre. They don't want to sell you an industrial air compressor. They want to sell you compressed air as a service, billed by the cubic meter.
The outcome, not the asset.
Precisely. And the standard SD process sales order, delivery, billing, it just completely breaks down in that world. Standard SD is linear. You sell a widget, you ship the widget, you bill for the widget one time. BRIM is designed for circular, recurring revenue models. A customer signs a contract, and then you bill them every month based on their usage, or a flat fee, or some complex hybrid of the two.
So walk us through the architecture, because I know BRIM isn't just one thing, right? It's a suite of different products that work together.
That's right. You can think of it as a three-part harmony. Part one is SM subscription order management. This component typically lives inside S/4HANA. It replaces the standard sales order as the master contact document.
And what does it do that a sales order can't?
It handles complex bundles. Think about buying a Tesla. You buy the car itself, which is a piece of hardware. You pay a monthly flat fee for the self-driving software, which is a subscription. And maybe you pay per kilowatt hour for using the supercharging network, which is pure usage. SM is designed to capture that entire complex contract structure in one place.
Okay, so SO is the master contract. What actually calculates the monthly bill?
That's part two, CC convergent charging. This is usually a separate high-performance engine. It's a massive real-time calculator. Its only job is to receive millions or even billions of tiny usage events. Things like customer watched a movie for 30 minutes, or customer's IoT sensor transmitted 5 gigabytes of data.
And it rates those events.
It rates them in real time against the rules defined in the contract. 5 gigabytes at a rate of $0.10 per gigabyte equals a charge of $0.50. It's incredibly powerful and scalable.
And then what happens?
That rated usage flows to part three, CI convergent invoicing. CI takes the one-time hardware charge from SOM, it takes the recurring subscription fee from SOM, and it takes the aggregated usage charges from CC, and it converges them all onto one single, easy-to-read invoice for the customer.
So if I'm an SD consultant and I want to pivot my career into this space, what's the one object or concept I need to go and learn first?
You need to learn the provider contract object in S/4HANA. That is the heart of the swarm component. And then you need to deeply understand the integration points between the provider contract and convergent charging. That interface is where all the magic happens.
Incredible. It really is a completely different way of thinking about what constitutes a sale. Okay, let's move into part two of the roadmap. Expansion. Broadening our horizons into logistics and planning. Now, traditionally, SD consultants, we've kind of dabbled in logistics. We know VL01N to create a delivery. We know VT01N to create a shipment.
Well, you can say goodbye to VT01N. The old Logistics Execution Transportation Module, LETRA, is deprecated. It's on the way out.
So the classic shipment document, the thing that we use to group multiple deliveries onto a single truck, that's gone.
It's gone. It's been completely replaced by SAP TM Transportation Management. And this is a really important point. TM used to be a completely separate system, a separate box. Now, it is offered as embedded TM. It lives directly inside the S/4HANA core.
So it's not just a new transaction code, it's a whole new engine.
It's a whole new logic. In classic SD, how did we calculate freight costs? We used simple condition records in the pricing procedure, maybe a flat fee or $100 per pallet. Very basic.
Right.
In TM, freight is calculated via a sophisticated engine called charge calculation. It uses complex rate tables, scales, and geographic zones. It can handle incredibly complex multimodal routes, like a journey that involves a truck, then a ship, then a train. It's extremely precise.
And how does that precise cost get back onto the customer invoice in SD?
Through a new document called the Freight Settlement Document, or FSD. The FSD does two things. First, it calculates the final cost and triggers the payment to the carrier, the trucking company. Second, and this is the key integration point, it posts the accrued cost back to the SD billing document. So you can either absorb it as cost of sales or pass it on to the customer. If you don't understand the FSD, you can't properly do billing for freight in 2026.
And what about the warehouse side of things?
It's the exact same story. The classic LEWM warehouse management module is dead. It's been replaced by embedded EWM extended warehouse management.
EWM has always seemed so intimidating and complex compared to WM.
It is more complex, but it's also vastly more capable. Now, as an SE consultant, you don't need to become an EWM expert. You don't need to know how to configure the radio frequency guns for the pickers, but you absolutely must understand the integration points.
So what's the key integration?
Your SD outbound delivery no longer just sits there waiting to be picked. It now creates a corresponding document in EWM called an outbound delivery order, or ODO. If your sales order delivery is stuck and won't post goods issue, 9 times out of 10, the problem is in the EWM system with the ODO.
And what kind of problems should I look for?
You need to understand concepts like wave management, how EWM groups orders together for efficient picking, and you need to understand packaging specifications. If the system doesn't have a rule telling it how a product is supposed to be packed into a box, it won't allow it to be picked. The delivery will just sit there, blocked.
So the days of just saying, oh, that's a warehouse problem and throwing it over the wall are over.
They are completely over. In a tightly integrated system like S/4HANA, a warehouse problem is a sales problem, is a finance problem. It's everyone's problem.
Okay, let's briefly touch on planning. The roadmap mentions SAP IBP integrated business planning. Why should a sales consultant who is focused on executing today's sales care about long-term planning?
Because the days of having sales reps just enter some numbers into an Excel spreadsheet for their forecast are dying. IBP brings science to forecasting. It uses a technique called demand sensing.
Demand sensing, what's that?
It uses AI and machine learning algorithms. It doesn't just look at past sales history. It looks at external data signals, weather patterns, economic indicators, even social media sentiment.
Wait, hold on. You're saying it looks at Twitter to create a sales forecast?
Yes. If there's a sudden spike in people on social media talking about a new fashion trend, IBP can pick up that signal and automatically increase the forecast for related products before a single sales order has actually been placed. It sees the demand coming.
That is absolutely wild.
And here's where it closes the loop for you, the SD consultant. IBP doesn't just send a wishful, unconstrained forecast to the system. It works with the production planning side to create a constrained forecast. It tells the sales system, hey, I know you think you can sell 10,000 units this month, but because of production limitations, you can realistically only get 5,000.
And that number?
That number feeds directly into the product allocation, PAL quantities, in ADTP that we talked about earlier. So when you're troubleshooting why a sales order isn't getting confirmed, you need to understand that the allocation number didn't just appear out of thin air. It came from this intelligent, constrained forecast in IBP.
It's a fully closed loop. Lead to cash to plan to make and back again.
That is the modern enterprise.
Okay, we've covered the functional changes, the new modules, the strategy. Now we're arriving at the part that I think scares a lot of functional people. Part 3, the hidden technical layer. The source material calls these the micro skills that truly differentiate a top-tier expert from a commodity consultant.
I like to call them the superpowers. These are the tools that allow you to say yes to a complex client requirement when the standard system seems to say no, but to do it in a way that doesn't break the clean core principle.
Let's start with the first one, which is described as pricing on steroids, CPF.
CPF stands for Configurable Parameters and Formulas.
Now, in the old ECC days, if we had a really weird pricing requirement, something like calculate the final price based on the average London Metal Exchange copper price over the last 3 months minus a customer-specific risk score, we have one answer.
A VOFM routine. You'd write a custom pricing formula, something like Form 901 in pure ABF code.
Exactly. And VOFM routines are a classic example of a modification that is highly problematic in the cloud. So what is CPF?
CPF is the modern, clean core compliant answer to that problem. It is effectively a powerful rules engine that lives inside the standard pricing procedure. It allows you to define incredibly complex mathematical formulas and lookups, which are basically decision tables, without writing a single line of ABAC code.
So in that copper price example, I could upload a table of the daily metal index prices into a CPF lookup table, and then write a formula in the pricing procedure that reads that table and calculates the average.
Yes. You configure the formula in a clean drag-and-drop interface. It executes dynamically during the pricing call. If you can master CPF, you can solve 90% of the complex pricing challenges that used to require an AB aper. You can save your clients from buying expensive third-party pricing tools like Vendavo or PriceX. You become the hero of the project.
That is a massive value add. Okay, what about the next one on the list? Advanced intercompany.
This is all about solving what I call the black hole problem in intercompany stock transfers.
Okay, explain the black hole.
In classic SAP, when you shipped stock from a plant in Germany to a plant in the US, what happened? The stock would post goods issue and disappear from the German plant's inventory. Then, days or even weeks later, while it was on the boat, it would finally get a goods receipt and reappear in the US plant's inventory.
Right. And during that time in transit, it was in limbo. It was just a number on a report. Finance hated it.
They hated it. The big question was always, who legally owns the inventory while it's on the boat? The new solution in S/4HANA is VST Valuated Stock in Transit.
Valuated stock in transit.
The system now creates a special logical inventory bucket, like a transit plan. When the goods leave Germany, the inventory moves into this transit bucket. We know exactly where it is and who legally owns it at every single step of the journey. And there's a beautiful Fiori app called Monitor Value Chains that visualizes the whole process.
What does that show?
It draws a graphical map of the entire end-to-end flow. The stock transfer PO, the outbound delivery, the intercompany invoice, the final customer invoice. You can see all the documents linked together and immediately identify exactly where a bottleneck is. It's a game changer for troubleshooting.
One last technical piece before we get to the toolkit. Global compliance, specifically something called DRC.
DRC is document and reporting compliance, and this is being driven entirely by governments around the world. Countries like Italy, Poland, Brazil, India, and soon many more are all mandating real-time e-invoicing.
Which means I can't just print a PDF invoice and mail it to my customer anymore.
No. It means that when you create a billing document in SAP, you must first send a specially formatted XML file to the government's tax authority server in real time for approval. Only after you get a digital signature back from the government can you then send the invoice to your customer.
In the past, we always used external third-party middleware tools for this, things from Seaburger or local add-ons.
And now SAP wants you to use their own embedded solution, DRC. It sits right there inside S/4HANA. As an SD consultant, your job becomes mapping the fields from the SD billing document to the specific government-mandated XML format. The demand for consultants with DRC skills is absolutely explosive right now because it's a legal requirement to do business.
Yeah.
If you can configure DRC, you will never be out of work.
This is a perfect segue into our final section, the Architect's Toolkit. We've talked about all these specific modules and features, but what about the broader technical fluency? The roadmap is very clear that we don't need to become hardcore developers, but we absolutely cannot be technically illiterate anymore.
That's the perfect way to put it. You don't need to be able to write the code, but you need to understand the building blocks. You need to know what a CDS view is. As a functional consultant, you need to stop asking developers for table joins.
So what should I ask for instead?
You should ask, what is the standard SAP CDS view for reading open sales orders? And then you should know how to use the view browser Fiori app to find it yourself.
And what about Fiori itself? It's not just a pretty new skin on the old SAP GUI anymore.
No, it is the new operating system. You need to understand the modern design concepts. The old Fiori Launchpad groups are deprecated. You now need to know how to configure spaces and pages. A space is like a dashboard for a specific role, like a sales manager space. And that space contains multiple pages, like an order overview page or a customer analytics page.
And moving fields around.
You need to know about adaptation projects, which allow you to move or hide fields on a Fiori screen for all users without writing any code. It's a key user tool that architects need to master.
Let's talk about integration. I keep hearing the term event mesh. It sounds very sci-fi.
It's actually very practical. Think about the fundamental difference between polling and real-time events. In the old world, if a mobile app for your sales reps wanted to know if a delivery had shipped, what would it do?
It would probably call an API every hour to check the status.
Right. It would poll the system. Is it shipped yet? No. Is it shipped yet? No. This is incredibly inefficient and puts a constant, unnecessary load on the ERP system.
So what's the event mesh way?
With Event Mesh, the moment you click Post Goods Issue in S/4HANA, the system emits a business event. It basically shouts out a message into the cloud. Delivery 123 has just been shipped. The mobile app is just listening for these events. It hears the shout and updates its status instantly.
So it's a reactive trigger, not constant checking.
It's an event-driven architecture, and a tree architect knows when to use an event for real-time notification versus when to use an API for a request-response data transfer.
And where do we go to find all these new APIs?
You go to the SAP API Business Hub. That's api.sapt.com. This website should be your new Bible. Never ever write an integration functional spec from scratch again. Go to the hub, find the standard API for, say, sales order create, copy the example JSON payload, and paste that directly into your specification document.
It proves you're sticking to the standard and not inventing something custom.
Exactly. It's the clean core way of integration.
What about process intelligence? The roadmap talks about Signavio.
SAP Signavio is like an MRI machine for your business processes. Instead of sitting in a workshop and asking a client, so tell me how your order-to-cash process works, you plug Signavio's process mining tool into their live system.
And what does it do?
It analyzes the system logs and maps out the actual process flows. It shows you the truth. It might reveal that 30% of the time, users are bypassing the standard credit check rule, or that certain orders consistently get stuck in delivery for 3 days.
It finds the reality versus the PowerPoint slide version of the process.
Yes. And it positions you as a consultant who solves real business problems, not just someone who configures system screens.
And one last thing on the toolkit, sustainability.
This is the emerging green ledger. Companies are now being legally required to report their carbon footprint. For an SD consultant, this is huge because a massive part of a product's carbon footprint comes from logistics, the emissions from the trucks, ships, and planes.
So how do we track that?
The new Sustainability Control Tower tool can pull logistics data directly from TM and EWM to calculate the carbon cost per sales order line item.
So we're heading towards a future where we'll be putting a CO2 cost as a statistical line item on the customer invoice.
That is exactly where high-end consulting is heading.
All of this brings us to the final point, building the lead-to-cash architect profile. It's about rebranding ourselves.
Absolutely. The first practical step. Go to your CV or your LinkedIn profile right now and remove ECC 6.0 from the headline. It immediately dates you. You need to be highlighting S/4HANA Public Cloud and process architecture. You need to show that you own the entire end-to-end flow.
A broader scope.
From the very beginning of the process, the lead, which comes from the customer experience or CX system, to the, quote, from a CPQ tool, to the order in S/4HANA, to fulfillment via TM and EWM, all the way to cash using BRIM and FICO. You are the person who understands how all those pieces connect.
And this broader scope, it changes how we actually run projects. The source talks a lot about activate and fit to standard.
The old blueprinting phase of a project is dead. You do not walk into a room with a blank whiteboard and ask the client, what do you want? That's how you end up with a heavily customized, unclean system.
So what's the new way?
The new way is show and tell. Use the SAP Best Practices Explorer to demonstrate the standard, pre-configured process on day one, and then you ask the client a different question. Here's how the standard SAP process works. Why can't your business run this way?
That requires a lot of confidence and, I imagine, strong negotiation skills?
It does, because the primary success metric for a project has changed. It used to be, is the user happy? Now, the primary metric is, how low is our custom code footprint?
And finally, a couple of scary technical terms that are now part of our world, DevOps and automated testing.
With cloud systems being upgraded every few months, you simply cannot do a full manual regression test each time. It's impossible. You need to learn and advocate for automated testing tools like Tricentis Tosca, which is now embedded in SAP Solution Manager, and you need to understand the basics of GCTS Git-enabled change and transport system.
So our configuration is being stored in Git now.
Yes, configuration and ABA code are being stored in Git repositories, just like modern software development. This enables things like version control and, critically, the ability to easily roll back a change if it breaks something in production.
So looking at this entire massive landscape, the roadmap proposes a career model for the future. It calls it the T-shaped profile.
This is the survival strategy for 2030 and beyond. The vertical bar of the T is your deep, specialized expertise. Maybe that's sales and BRIM. You know that area better than anyone else in the world. But the horizontal bar of the T is your broad architectural knowledge.
So you know enough about the other areas to connect the dots.
You know enough logistics, enough finance, enough integration, enough analytics to understand how your deep specialty fits into the end-to-end process. You don't just configure your module in a silo. You architect the entire value chain.
You are a lead-to-cash architect.
Yeah.
You own the flow from the moment the customer clicks buy online to the moment the cash from that sale hits the company's bank account.
That's the role.
Let's wrap all of this up with the win. If I'm that consultant listening to this on February 1st, 2026, and I'm feeling overwhelmed and maybe a little behind, what is the practical 3-year plan to get from here to there?
Year one is all about the foundation. Go out and get your core S/4HANA sales certification. But don't just study for the test. Build a sandbox system, get your hands dirty, and focus on deeply understanding the clean core concepts and the 3 extensibility tiers. That's your base.
Okay, so year 1 is the base. What about year 2?
Year two is specialization. This is critical. Pick one of the heavy hitter modules. Do not try to learn BRIM and TM and EWM all at the same time. You will learn a little about everything and become an expert in nothing. Pick one. Go deep, own it. Become the go-to person in your company for that specific niche.
In year 3?
Year three is architecture. Now that you have a solid base and a deep specialty, you focus on the glue that holds it all together. This is where you learn about integration using SAP CPI. You learn about data governance with MDG. You learn about analytics with SAP Analytics Cloud. This is what elevates you from being a module consultant to a true solution architect.
It's a daunting path, but it's a very clear one.
It is. And the key takeaway from the entire roadmap is this. The role of the SD consultant isn't dying. It's elevating. The role of the low-level configurator, who just updates tables in the IMG, that role is dying.
Right.
The architect role, the process owner role, is just getting started. It's more complex, yes, but it's also much more strategic, more valuable, and honestly, a lot more fun.
I really like that perspective. We're not just losing familiar tables and T-codes, we're gaining a whole new arsenal of capabilities.
Exactly. By 2030, you won't be hired to configure an item category. You'll be hired to architect a subscription-based revenue model on the business technology platform. It's a whole different conversation.
Well, that seems like the perfect place to leave it. That brings us to the end of this deep dive. To you, our listener, standing there in February 2026. The future is already here. It's not some distant concept anymore. The tools are right in front of you. You just have to have the courage to pick them up and start learning. Good luck with the pivot. We'll see you on the next one.